So for our closing keynote speech, we get to invite Sipho Eric Ndlovu to the stage to chat about a history you know, a history we remixed. So Sipho's been doing loads of youth engagement work, and he's going to share some of his thoughts, the impact that it's had on him and the youth as well. So I hope you've got your pens and paper at the ready. Sipho Eric Ndlovu, welcome to the stage.
Mic check, 1, 2, 1, 2. Thank you, Amy, so much. This is what I'm gonna do. Good evening, everybody. How are we all? I said, good evening, everybody. How are we all? I heard a secret. I heard that it was Friday. Good evening, everybody. How are we all? Apparently we are headed into the weekend. I'm so happy to be here with you all today. And thank you, Amy, for the introduction. It's been a pleasure meeting so many people today and engaging in all of the breakout sessions and talking to people over lunch and hovering over at the table when you discovered that the hot water had run out. So you're like, what do I do? But my name is Sipho Eric Ndlovu. I do have a stammer as well, so that might introduce itself every now and then. And today I am talking through a history you know, a history we remixed. Coming up as a young person myself, I have the pleasure of sharing my journey, having entered the arts and going to museums and engaging in many heritage projects as an early teenager, and having the experiences when I would say, wow, this looks cool, and seriously, that's your job? You just get to talk about art all the time? What does that mean? And then actually engaging with art organizations as a volunteer, and then whilst exchanging my interest, then being invited to actually take part in those projects, and then actually leading on projects and then taking roles in art organizations, yet still being seen as a young person, which wasn't necessarily a bad thing, but of course there were connotations. And then I'm a black young person. I come across the way I do. I wasn't born in the UK. Just all of these tick boxes, have a disability, and all of these things. So I'm here to talk about what that journey has been about. Does that all sound okay? Oh, guess what as well? I'll also be asking you to get involved a couple of times. So yeah, we'll see how that will go. I have 4 slides which I will be going through. I will go ahead and introduce myself. Then we're gonna play a little activity where I'll be able to hear from you all collectively as well. I'll then go on to talk about some of the organizations that I have worked with. I then did have a video, but unfortunately that won't be able to be played today. But how today's talk will finish is with a spoken word poem which has been specifically written for this symposium here, and then we'll end all together. I'm just going to set a timer on my phone as well. My heritage is deep-rooted in that African soil where my mother tongue would be spoken. And how better to commemorate it than mina nkhuluma khona lokho mama wanfundisa. Umama wanfundisa. Izinto atnizibuza. Things I used to question. You see, every time I questioned my being, the answer, taking shape of a blade beneath my skin, was slowly peeling me back like a fruit, revealing the inner truth, sewing me back to my roots, piling on the soil from where I was once uprooted from. It's never been enough to know that I was an African, a stammering African, it was important to know what it had to mean. My name is Sipho Eric Ndlovu, Zimbabwean-born, Birmingham adopted. I currently work as a performance artist, so I incorporate spoken word poetry. I do have a dancer's background also, and I also love theater and just having fun with people. I've always had an interest in academia and heritage, because in school, in classes, I just always wanted to know more. I always had my hand up, but then the stammer spoke first, so I could never really get my words out. But I carried on and I persevered. See, with my stammer, I have to practice a rhythmic talking. Whilst talking to you right now, I literally have an instrumental in my head. If this was, let's say, just over 10 years ago, I would literally have to talk on beat because it's the only way that I would speak. But I've learned to practice to talk off beat, talk on beat whenever I need to. I discovered this practice when my mother gave me an Eminem CD at the age of 8 years old. The Eminem Show, to be specific. Have a listen and you tell me if that's appropriate to give to an 8-year-old. There was a great talk earlier, a breakout session by Chip about bad things need to happen. I was introduced to hip hop when I was 8 years old through that Eminem CD. The content is creative but horrific, explicit. But it changed my life when I started to rap along, because it was the first time that I had felt any sense of fluency. Now, fluency is not the most important thing, and I have to say that as someone with a speech impediment, with this fluency. But as I'm speaking to you right now, and as it always has been, my chest and my head do contract. So I hold a lot of pressure and tension when I'm talking. But that rhythm that musical experience gave me was transformative. From then, I was curious, what is going on? What is happening here? I continued practicing that rap style in my speaking until I came to the UK and I was practicing English in England, in real life context. It was no longer going to become a second language, but a very prominent language. But I still had my stammer in those classrooms, in Wolverhampton, where we first landed, and then where we settled in Birmingham. But I kept putting my hand up. Teachers, not all of them were patient, but some of them were. Students, not all of them were patient, but some of them were. Some were my friends, some weren't, some laughed. It happens, right? But I kept asking questions and I kept persevering. What I had experienced through that musical exchange was that there is something which has helped me so much. It's given me courage and it's given me motivation to keep pushing. See, I started between the age of 0 to 5 being mute. I was considered mute, and my parents were told that I was never ever going to speak. But I did, and somehow I kept pushing. Not only because I had things to say, but I was curious. Because when I discovered that song, this hip hop, this exploration, it gave me a reason to keep pushing. And that's what I decided that I wanted to do. I pieced it together that what I was experiencing was something creative. So therefore, it was something very, very important to me. I am of a Christian background. So I was also brought up, being taught to help people. So when it came down to it and I thought about my place in this world, how was I going to help people? Creativity became my tool. But I remained curious. How had others done it? That's where history came into it. Heritage is defined as, well, I'm in a room with many heritage professionals. I'm not going to bore you. But we all have a sense and a definition of heritage. It is something for all of us to hold on to. So when I was attending museums and art galleries and going to other heritage sites when I was younger, I was often looking for my place within it, for my story within it. It didn't always feel as though I was allowed to even comment. So how could it be engaging? I was being spoken to and spoken at. There was no space for a conversation. But I kept on being curious. So the older I got, when I had then the opportunity to lead on projects and work with multiple organizations. And at this point, I would like to move on to the second slide. Oh, wow, it's there. When working with many other organizations, I was always in the room wanting to ask questions. I was expected to just be present. Now, this wasn't explicitly said, but I could see it. My peers could see it. My friends could see it. Because when you are called on upon as a young person in many of these spaces, so we're talking about like just under a decade ago now, were young people the buzzword? Is it still the buzzword? Listen, we just wanted a way in. We needed these opportunities. We needed to get in there because there's nothing else we could do. It didn't seem like many of these art spaces or heritage spaces that we could actually have any voice. So any opportunity coming up through our emails or coming through our mailboxes, we just signed up and we showed up and we worked very, very hard, even though within those spaces, we were just expected to be present. They said they wanted to hear a youth voice, but did you though? Because the things that we had to say would have turned your organization upside down. So we tried to wait. We tried to be patient. And every time we tried to come up with an idea, I was like, that's not really gonna work, that the budget won't really stretch. See, let us explain to you how things usually work within this industry. Okay, but at some point we are gonna be working within this industry. We are gonna remember every single time you told us no, or came up with an excuse. See, the way that could come across sometimes is that you don't have the energy. You can't be bothered. We traveled and followed these paths where if you're from a particular cultural background or necessarily any cultural background, exploring this industry is like, why are you doing that? Like, where are you going? There's not much money into it. What career can you do as a curator? What do you curate? What's going on here? When we are showing up into these spaces and we are talking to industry and heritage professionals and we are giving back excuses, yes, it's disheartening, but there is an energy which has to be respected. It's the effort which has to be respected. And so now I have a question for you all. Who are you? Who are you all? Now, I would like to ask you that question of who are you? And I will give you 20 seconds, is that okay? Do you think you can have a quick conversation in 20 seconds on your tables? If I may ask for your response to that question to be centered around an interest of yours. So I am a basketball player. I'm not a professional, but I like to play basketball, so I am a basketball player. I am a coloring book enthusiast. I am a Christmas tree decorator. We'll get into that time. So anything that you're interested in, 20 seconds, just have a quick conversation. Who are you just by your interest? Okay, brilliant. So I'm counting 4 tables along this row. I'm counting 3 tables along this row, and I'm counting 4 tables along that row. So that's how we will go. Up here, then this one here, down there, this one there, down there. Is that cool? Hey y'all, how you doing? And then we will end with you. Is that cool? Thank you so much. Everybody wants to get involved. Okay, and we'll start with this table, if that's okay. Is that right? All right, I will ask you the question, okay? So no one responds until I ask you the question. In 3, 2, 1, who are you?
I'm a design thinker.
Who are you?
Human.
Who are you?
A producer.
Who are you?
A creative.
Who are you?
Runner, chaser, baker, pilot, cat daddy.
Who are you?
A maker.
Who are you?
Maker.
Who are you?
History nerd.
You're welcome. Who are you?
A crafter.
Who are you?
A big leek grower.
Who are you?
A home cook.
Please give yourselves a round of applause, everybody. You are all very welcome within this space. When I was entering organizations when I was much younger, see, I wasn't coming in as a professional anything. That's how we all start, right? You just have this starting phase. But it was the way that people would talk about me, and people would introduce me to others and to their colleagues based on an interest that I had shared or something that they had seen about me. Rarely did I actually have the opportunity to introduce myself because there was something about people who were leading organizations. They had seen something in me, and granted, they wanted to bring it in because they saw I had an interest in performing or utilizing a microphone or facilitation, and so they would then put these titles onto me. Oh, you're this and you're that, and I was like, oh, okay. I definitely felt like I had to accept those roles because at this point I'm now starting to get paid. That's making a difference because, I mean, sure, if you can just cover my travel, that is absolutely amazing. But as soon as things start to change, I definitely felt a little bit conflicted because I felt as though I had to compromise. But unfortunately, felt as though I had to compromise myself at times because what it looked like was that within the industry, things had been set in place for so long that there was absolutely no changing it. So everybody who was going into those spaces had to reproduce a title that someone before them had, and you were now coming in as a newer version of someone else, and that just sort of carries on because you then grow up into the ranks and you do the same thing with the next young person that you see. And this was something that me and my peers had clocked onto, and we wondered, is this it? Apparently, if you want to pay rent, it is. Is it? Where are the other options? Where's the space to even start those conversations? How do you actually do it in the first place? The idea of collaboration, I've seen that work really, really well. And we had a great conversation earlier this morning, led by Fern, again, in one of the breakout sessions, where I came into the realization of the difference between collaboration and partnerships when it comes to working with individuals and organizations. Because if we are a partnership, right, and I'm an individual or I have my own company, but there's one more prominent voice, I don't know if that's much of a partnership unless we agree maybe to, to like a 60-40 kind of split. But I don't know, sometimes it can really feel conflicting. And the reason I bring up this point is because this was the kind of language which was being used at me as I was coming up. I didn't completely understand it, but again, I wanted to pay rent, so I felt as though I had to accept all of these titles and this different jargon, and it's only through experience I've been able to distinguish what these words actually mean. What would have been really helpful was if there was someone within all of those organizations who could actually talk to me, figure out my story, and I don't know, maybe like project about where I could go, just so I could begin to explore it. Because I was just going from opportunity to opportunity with no opportunity to explore. Because I thought that's what you had to do. That's not the case, though. The organizations behind me, which I was very blessed to work with in many different capacities, I always entered asking the same question. Because in my experience, it was about accessibility. Now, you can use this in the broader definition about access for any and everyone. There is a disability connotation to it as well. And I think that definitely applies. Because in my experience, when I was being invited into spaces and I was being asked to talk, but my stammer on a particular day was more present than I was almost. And the patience didn't match what people were asking for. That was not an accessible space. Again, with the use of jargon or just inappropriate language as well. What I started practicing as part of my work is making space for people to not only be themselves in how they want to express themselves, but I think most importantly about how they want to introduce themselves. If we are about to work together, and this is how I've started to lead on programs, using this kind of word about together, how can I be honest about some of my biases, about some of my internal struggles when it comes to the misinformation that I have or a lack of knowledge that I might carry? How can I be open and honest about that within a space as a professional now? Because I understand that young people are looking at me and many other people are looking at me when I'm leading something in a space as the person that you can ask a question to and I will have all the answers. And it's been clear, completely clear, that I definitely won't have those answers. But it's about how one goes on to facilitate those conversations in a way which invites insight. Because my goodness gracious me, can't younger people teach you something? Older people can also teach you something. People of a different background can teach you something. If you're ever feeling like you are the most knowledgeable person in a room about a particular subject, that's a point where you might have reached a little bit of a block. You've got to move. And I've learned, again, in my experience, that moving forward means feeling uncomfortable. And that's the truth of it. Again, in my experience, the older I've gotten, and I've gotten a lot better at finding ways, sustainable ways to pay my rent as well. Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Dad. They're really proud of me for that. But in that kind of comfortability there, I definitely noticed that I was becoming very, very comfortable within my work as well. And I was almost regurgitating ideas and regurgitating processes. Now, understandably, I was heading towards a burnout in certain instances because there was so much demand. And I was only one person, or there was only two of us, there was only three of us leading on particular projects. So I had to draw for the easier option. But this is another aspect now of compromise, whereas before, when I was starting out as the young person and I was having to compromise myself, now I've been leading projects and it's the young people themselves who have to be compromised. It's their experience which has to be compromised because I don't have the energy or capacity to build on something new. That just won't work. That has to change. And if anybody else would have been experiencing that, my advice is, again, going back to collaboration. We have a very huge privilege in that in this room we have people from many different organizations. We have lots of different freelancers. We have people who are working in so many different capacities. I think it's important to continue talking to one another as well. Sending emails, sending the Instagram DMs, anyway, in any form of communication where it's just about asking, how are you dealing with this and how are you dealing with that? Within these industries, there is such a huge nature of being competitive and competing for funds. Now, that is, of course, for the sustainability of the work and the organization. But what is the most important thing to you as part of your purpose, as you call it your purpose, within your organization, within your work? If for me, it was young people, then all of these other conversations which I am having and the sacrifices I'm having to make and the compromises I'm having to make, I need to know that I need to do that at the very least with the young people themselves. So that is a question for you to ponder on, about what is the most important thing for you within your context, within the work that you are doing. Third slide, please. There it is. This is the video I was going to show you, but I can't show you it. But I would like to thank Birmingham Museum and Art Gallery for this commission. This is called For the City's Young. You can watch it yourselves as well. And I'm easy to contact if anybody does want it. I was prompted to explore a question of what is the future of museums? And how will people engage with heritage in the future? Hence why I was really excited to show it to you today. I was like, check this out. But you can watch it in your own in your own spare time. Watch it this weekend. What are you all doing this weekend? Watch the film. Gosh. As part of this commission, I had the opportunity to explore the hundreds and thousands of artifacts and artworks which is currently owned by Birmingham City Council. Not even Birmingham Museum and Art Gallery, Birmingham City Council. I've learned that that's how things work sometimes. It's not the big institution. There's all these politics and all of that. I can't show you this film. And can you believe that we are oh my gosh, we're 25 minutes in, everybody. And that's my time. I would like to end with a poem which I've written. And do you think you can help me out one more time? Yeah, I think we could do that, just to finish it. All right, cool, let's do it. So I'm gonna use my hands for this one. Cool. So I'm gonna split you all into like two groups. So this group here, including you, you're also well coordinated there. Yes, you're in there. So I'm gonna point to you, and you're all gonna say, "No like it, no lighter." Anybody know what that reference is from? Take me out. Oh, no, you can shout it. It's fine. And same thing here. I'm gonna point to you, and you're gonna say, "No like it, no lighter." Oh, no one else said it. How come? All right, it's okay. Maybe it's time to actually get into the poem. But my name has been Sipho Eric Ndlovu, and it's been such a pleasure meeting all of you today. It's my first time in Norwich as well. Had a wonderful time. Yeah, it's really, really cool here. It's really, really beautiful. Yeah, and I hope you all get home safe and God bless. All of that good stuff. If the Common Ground Symposium was a come-on-down coliseum announced as a northerner would have it, what would urge you to press for nor like it, nor light it? I answered, if you invite me into a room having not prepared for me to be there, our interests aren't prioritized as your project is a tick box exercise. Your organization is grounded by a well-informed team, but there is not reflected in your executive scheme. If I, as your target audience, don't agree with your approach, don't scold or grow cold. Wear the truth fed back to you as you would a homemade brooch. My feedback is a gift, well presented and easy to access. This present is not wrapped, had hand delivered for you to smell every detail, but if you can't listen, why must I waste my time? The irony is that I will, because this work affects me. Heritage in this context is quite rejective, rejecting my existence a source of prominence. There's no point making promises. With my heritage, we honor it. But what do you? Because I too have a story, a history. My mind doesn't have to be fixed. If you invite me into your room, I will challenge a history you know and call it a History Remixed. Amy, back to the stage.